Jessica Lucero. I'm a 59 kilo weightlifter, and my best lifts are 94 in the snatch and 116 in the clean and jerk. In the competition, I should say. Oh no, that's not cool. I don't think it's as cool. My career, it's always changed, like what I like more. I think I've gone through a period of time where I've preferred training. I've gone through a period of time where I've preferred competing. And then I've learned more recently how to value resting. I wouldn't say I ever like it, but I value it more. I still think my favorite thing is competing, and I think that's just because you get to test kind of where you're at, and I'm a competitive person, so being against other girls is fun. And pushing myself based on like what's going on in the room is fun too. Yeah, and in training too, like it's always fun to make it a competition. If you're training alone, like you kind of have to trick yourself into it being a competition by yourself. But if you're training with teammates, that's something that I always like to do, is like if you're not feeling it that day, is to just like, how can I make this like a little bit competitive? Like you can always twist it. Like if I'm training with a guy and he's doing the same sort of exercises, like I have to stay within, 10 kilos or whatever, or I have to make mine look better than his at the top percentages or whatever, and let the coach judge based on, how it looks or whatever we decide the competition rules are, to keep it interesting, because training can be mundane, especially in weightlifting, so breaks it up a little. That's a funny question. Not in a bad way. It's just like, I don't know that I ever at any point was like, I'm going to be a professional athlete and I'm going to dedicate 16, 15 years to it. I think it just kind of was like, I had the mindset of, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it takes. I want to do everything I can to reach the specific goal of making the Olympics. Like along the ways, there's been some hiccups and things that have pulled me out of that mindset, but I've always come back to that why, that reason to keep pushing. And so no matter like what happened in my life, it was really easy for me to transition back into that mindset. And then like, I don't know, it kind of felt like a blink of an eye, and here I am like 15, 16 years later, I don't know exactly, and I'm still here. So I don't think it was like a intentional, I'm going to dedicate this much time. It just kind of happened. Yeah, and things kept happening, and there's so many things that either set you back or jump you forward, that motivate you or demotivate you or whatever. And so it's like this constant like chase of, okay, well I'm just going to come in every day and do the best I can today, and take the highs when I get them and ride the lows when they come, and then not worry so much about like the time or think about it that much. I try not to anyways. When I started my athletic pursuits as a kid, I did soccer. That was my first sport that I ever played. And well, like besides ballet when I was like really little, but I don't know if that counts because I was like 3. But when I played soccer, it was like for a travel team. It was a competitive team. Like we competed in Canada, nationally ranked and things like that. And when we moved, I found weightlifting, and long story short, after a few years of doing it, I was like, oh, I wonder how fast I am at soccer. Like the skills that I wasn't as good at then, I wondered like what weightlifting has done to contribute to that, to see like where I would be now. And so I was more curious, and especially because weightlifting doesn't have like a collegiate program where I could get paid to go to school, like school would be covered. I had considered like, oh, maybe if I make the 2008 Olympics, like I can switch back to soccer and have them like try to walk onto a team and see if they'll get my scholarship paid for. So that was like a passing thought. Of course, I didn't make the 2008 Olympics, so it wasn't really like a real thought. It was just like something that kind of passed through my mind. And then after the 2012 Olympics, I was really close with some of the female wrestlers at the Olympic Training Center where I lived, and we would mess around on the mats and stuff, and they would teach me certain skills and things, and they would always joke that I would be good at it. And I was like, okay, well maybe after I make the 2012 Olympics, I'll switch to wrestling, like just to do something, like I'm just that, I don't know, competitive, or I don't know, just to do something else. So that crossed my mind too, but then when I didn't make the 2012 Olympics, I was like, nope, still focused. So it was like mostly passing thoughts, but definitely crossed my mind. The example too, when I was at the Olympic Training Center, I had a lot of friends that were in other sports, and I would watch them, you know, have these heart-wrenching, just barely miss out on the Olympic moments. And I'd see them, you know, put their head down, keep going for another 4 years, and then end up making it. And so I had this example of perseverance out of other athletes that I was surrounded by. And so it kind of was like a natural response, I guess, for me. So I never was like, oh, if I don't make it, this is what I'll do next. It was more like, I know, I still believe I can do it. I still believe I have more in me that I can get better on. And if I missed out on for this reason, I think that I can improve in that specific way. So like in every Olympics that came up, whatever it was that, you know, was the reason I didn't qualify. So like 2008, I wasn't really in the mix. I was still in high school, but you know, I had the dream still. It's actually funny because the top 30 athletes were invited to Olympic trials that year, and for some reason, I could be remembering this wrong too, but in my memory, I was in the top 30, but my coach wouldn't let me go because it was the same weekend as my senior prom for high school, and my coach was like, you need to live your life and like go to prom and like not experience it. So I wouldn't have made the Olympics anyways, but then in 2012, I was still developing as an athlete. I wasn't where I needed to be, but also, and I got injured right before Olympic trials, so I wasn't even able to go compete. And I remember having to go home and watch it in my mom's house and like watching the Olympic trials and just being like really upset and depressed. And then in 2016, it was like the closest I'd ever been. And afterwards, it was hard to choose because I felt like I gave everything I had to that quad. But when I would watch the videos, I'd be like, okay, here's where I can improve. I could get better at my technique. I still feel like I have more numbers wise that I can give. And like, so it was just kind of always like there's something more that I have, if that makes sense. I don't know. This is something that my husband and I talk about a lot because like for how it's looking for 2020, it's like, I mean, how could I be upset about how it's happened? Like I've done everything I've perceived to be necessary to get better and to improve. And if that wasn't going to happen, then, you know, it's not meant to be, but that doesn't mean anything less of me in the sense that I've still put in a lot of time. I've still put in a lot of effort. I've still done a lot of cool things. And really like, I guess for my moral code at least, like the point of me doing all those things isn't really for like self-glory or whatever. So like having a platform to be able to help other people was more important to me in the end. And so I think if I keep my focus on that and not like think about, oh, like my own personal ego and desires of what I wanted out of my career, it's, you know, it's okay. It is what it is. Like you said, like I've tried really hard and I've done a lot of cool things regardless. And wherever that ends, it's still, I think it's still cool. This is another funny thing because my husband and I talk about this all the time because it's my why, or like the reason that I'm doing this is constantly evolving and constantly changing. And with me getting older as an athlete, it's also changing in the sense like what I'm capable of now I know is a little bit more limited than maybe 4 years ago what I was capable of. So really my short term right now is to improve, period. Just to improve. If I could improve on my total that I did in 2016, I would be really, really happy. And that's really a small goal. I mean, it's big in the sense that it's going to take me a while to get back into shape because I was in great shape at that point, but it's a lot, it's still not a lot in the sense that it's not a huge number or whatever that's completely I'm not capable of, because I've been within reach a couple times the last 3 years. Just haven't really quite put it together on the platform. Long-term goal, I would say to support someone else in their career the way people have been able to support me in mine. So maybe not to get them to a specific point like the Olympic Games or an American record or whatever. Of course, that would be amazing. But like, I think to be able to be that person in their corner that supports them and makes them feel confident and gives them that edge that I was missing for big chunks of my career, I think will be like great for me to be able to give back to like the next generation that way. I think with the evolution of the sport, it's been a really interesting thing that the elite team has more responsibility than just what they had before, and they have a lot more pressure than they had before, in the sense that way more people are watching and way more people have an opinion. And then for them, the opportunity for them is a lot greater too, because they have more opportunities to make more money. There's more sponsorship opportunities, there's more exposure opportunities, but with that comes more work for them, more, you know, comparison to other athletes, because, you know, everyone can be successful, but it's really easy still to compare yourself from one person to another, like even just in the small sense of like, oh, this person has more followers than me, like what am I doing wrong? It doesn't mean that they're liked more or not and you're liked less or whatever, but those are things that I think athletes now have to overcome, where before it was just like a very intense focus on the competition. And also back then, you didn't know what your competitors were doing until like game day. So it would be a lot of like, okay, this is the start list. If there was a big number on the start list, then people would be like, oh shoot, like they've gotten a lot better. But like otherwise you wouldn't know, and they might be lying on the start list, and you would just get there, and so you just see as the competition goes, there's no like getting in someone's head or strategy that happens with social media. And I know like now, at least when competitions get closer, there's certain moments where coaches will say, hey, like let's not be posting this percentage to this percentage because we don't want your competitors to see, whether that's in America or internationally, just because you're competing all the time, like 24/7, and there's always some like mental factor that goes into that, whether it's like trying to psych somebody out or whatever the coach's like thing is. But yeah, I mean, besides the fans, and in comparison, the 2008 Olympic trials, there was people there obviously, and like I told you, I didn't get to go, but I watched it, and the amount of people that were there, it was like family and friends and like fans of the sport that were there at the time, but most of them were involved in some way or another. And for 2016, it was like celebrities were there. There were so many media teams, like there were strict rules on what was allowed to be filmed and what was allowed to not be filmed and what you were allowed to say and not say. So like the level is just like, it's just been like intensified, which makes competing a lot more exciting in my opinion. But I think for other people, it makes it a little bit scarier because there's just different things. And then as far as like, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but also internationally when we compete, we used to compete with like whoever the national team coach was. We didn't have our personal coaches with us. We didn't have that level of comfort. So when we'd go, we would know we weren't going to be with our personal coaches. So the guy that was, or a girl that was in the back with us all the time, training with us all the time, they are like, okay, like this is what she's capable of doing, gives them the numbers to the national coach, and then you go travel across the world with some stranger basically and have somebody else coach you. And now we have that comfort of having our personal coaches there, and but then there's like the drama of, does everyone get along on the team? Like, so, you know, there's just really great things and things that are taking time to adjust to all together. But yeah, it's been like incredible to watch and to like be a part of, like, and to watch it happen and still be able to keep up. Like, honestly, I just feel really blessed, I guess, that, you know, I was able to evolve while the sport was evolving too, and keep up with like the demands of what was becoming of the sport and the talent level, and rising with the talent level. I feel like proud of that. Yeah, there was actually, before 2016 or 2017 national championships, I always, and this is maybe something that I have to do because of how I started in the sport, but I usually try to go off social media within that 10-day period where people are pushing and posting on social media and stuff. So I can kind of internally focus on what I'm doing, my game plan, how I'm feeling, and not really think about anybody else but myself. But during that time period, people still text me and tell me things. So like I still semi know what's going on. But there was a girl that moved down from a weight class, and everybody from her team was posting about how she was going to break my records and do all these things. And like, this was probably like the third time a team has kind of approached it in that way, where they were like posting about it and boasting about it on social media before it actually happened. And you know, when I'm off social media like that and I'm in the zone, I'm like, I feel confident and I feel really ready, regardless of what's going on. Like, I'll get myself to that point because I'm about to compete. I've worked really hard to get here. And so when I hear stuff like that, it makes me excited because I'm like, okay, let's do it. If I'm gonna have to push, then let's push. Like, let's see how this turns out. So there's like, and that's, you know, one perspective of it, but I know that it doesn't always make me feel as motivated. Sometimes if I don't feel as confident, or if I've been hurting or whatever, then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, ooh. But yeah, like, it does make a big difference, and it is like a factor that you have to kind of game plan in. And as the coaches that are working with the athletes, depending on the type of athlete they are, like, and if that's going to bother them, like, I would highly suggest not talking about that stuff, because even like back then, I would get really nervous when I first started weightlifting. And when we only had the start lists to look at, my coach would be like, don't look at the start list. Like, don't even look. We'll figure it out when we get there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's going. It doesn't matter anything. And so I've kind of carried that over into now as far as social media, but I've gotten a little bit more relaxed in competing and like a little bit more confident, so I can see more and whatever. But it is funny because, yeah, like, it is a different beast trying to, like, I don't know, see that stuff. And then like, it's easy. It's also, everyone tapers and peaks for competitions differently. And like, when I'm cutting weight really hard, it's easier for me to taper like further out. And I feel better on competition day. So they might still be going heavier and I'm like going really light, and then like, you'll start to panic, like, am I doing the right thing? But like, okay, I've been doing this for years and that's always what I do, and that's great. So yeah. When we all used to go to the Olympic Training Center for camps and stuff, we would just do stupid things, like try to sneak out in the middle of the night to go dancing and stuff like that, because there's not much to do at the training center. So like, we would just be training like 12 times a week, and sometimes more than that, and like recovering all the time, and we didn't have anything else to do. And so like, on Wednesday nights, there was like this discounted like at country bar that did like this thing, and it was just down the street from where the Olympic Training Center was, and none of us had cars, so we would jump the fence at the Olympic Training Center and we would walk down there and we would dance until like whatever, way past curfew, and then try to sneak back in with security not seeing us, like in the snow in heels and stuff. It was embarrassing and stupid, but things like that. Yeah, things that isn't great role model material. 21, like, we were old enough to be there. Like, it's not like we were, yeah, but we weren't. It was just like, and then also I'd get in trouble a lot because the Olympic Training Center coach, he's Polish, Zygmunt at the time, Zygmunt Smolcers. I would get yelled at all the time because I would try to go lay out in the sun in between trainings and to get a tan, and he would like be walking by and he'd be like, this is not vacation, go inside. And like, I'd always get in trouble for that. And I was like, but Zygmunt, I feel better when I have a tan. And he's like, no, you are not a movie star. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I'll say first too that like, it's kind of hard to explain, but in the sense that our coaches are the ones that are giving us the programming and doing all of that, but really it's up to us to make the lifts or not. Like, the coach can't go out on stage and do it for us. So it's really like up to us if we want it bad enough to do it. And if we trust our coach enough to be able to prepare us well enough, you know, then we should be confident enough that we're ready and we're prepared. a lot of the coaches will say things like, I won't put anything on the bar I don't believe you can make. So even if it's something bigger than we've ever made, when we feel insecure about that, it's something to like, you don't feel that confidence, you can lean on that coach and give that confidence to them. Like, well, if they're putting it on the bar, then they believe I can do it, which means I can do it. That's kind of been like my outlook on it. And something that, and I was actually just talking to one of my athletes about this right before, because everything that we decide to worry about or think about is a choice. So we can choose to make anything a big deal or not a big deal. I could have the worst training cycle of my life and just decide it doesn't matter, I'm gonna have a good competition, and will it to be true, and just believe that I'm still gonna do a good job. Because I've heard so many athletes like that I've admired over the years, and I'd ask them questions like that. And they would say, you know, my best competitions sometimes are after really awful training cycles. And so like that makes me feel better, because it's like, not everything means something, you know? Like if I'm having a bad day, it doesn't mean I'm gonna have a bad competition. If I'm having a good day, it doesn't mean I'm gonna have a good competition. Like anything can happen. So it's really just how I wanna decide to interpret it and perceive the situation, and how I want to move forward based on like what my goals are for that. And it is that simple. And I think that a lot of people are like, oh, it's not that easy. And it's not easy, but it is simple, if that makes sense. I keep saying that, but you don't have to keep saying it. Through everything, there's a lesson to be learned. I said this on social media the other day. It's always easy to find the negative things, but how can you find the good things out of the bad? And then how can you make it a lesson to be better for the future? So, and sometimes it's not as possible. Like if it's an injury, sometimes those things just happen. And in those cases, it's just like, all right, accept it. This is how it is. Like there's nothing you can do to change it. So there's no reason to like like you can be upset for a little bit, but there's no reason to like sulk about it, because it is what it is. Like the only thing you can do is keep taking steps. But like as far as not making a team or not hitting a goal or whatever, like those things, it's like, okay, well, like how can I analyze it and see what I did wrong and where I can get better, and what can I do to be a better athlete or person or whatever out of the situation. Like if we just dwell on all the negatives and just like let yourself spiral, it's just like life's too hard for that, you know? So for me, it's just like, okay, I mean, it's not always that simple. Like I said, I will still feel sad for a while. Like after 2016, it took me a long time to feel like motivated. It was almost like I had to trick myself. Every single competition, I'd be like, all right, if I don't do this, then it's my last competition. And then I would do it and everything was fine. And I'd be like, okay, the next one. So I did that to myself probably for like a year and a half before it like started to be like, I was excited again to train, and I was eager to like improve, and I was eager to do that. So yeah, like it's just maybe playing tricks on yourself a little bit sometimes too. So I asked somebody to help me with my programming, but I think we'll probably be having Christian do my attempts and having just random people help him in certain times, and then like kind of go competition to competition and decide from there. I think eventually I'll like be all in with a certain person if I decide to keep competing for like internationally and stuff. As of right now too, like my club is growing, and so one of the athletes that just joined basically is going to be a handful, in the sense that she's got a lot of pressure on her in the next couple months. I'll just say that. So knowing that, I don't know how much I can commit to like traveling for my own competitions. Not saying that I'm like 100% like I'm not competing. It's just I have to reset kind of the priorities, at least into the near future, because of that. And once we get past that specific competition that we're shooting for this new girl that we have, I think it'll be easier for me to be more open about those changes or those choices, because I'll have a better idea of like what my plans are and what I'm gonna do moving forward. So yeah, I guess I still didn't answer you, but I will at some point answer that question.
No worries.
So it's kind of crazy because the Academy of Weightlifting was closing. They were starting to do their own thing. They had like their whole different vision of what they wanted to do. There were a lot of changes as far as like coaching and things like that happening. And for me, it was kind of at this weird point in my career where it was like, okay, I'm not in the position where it's realistic for me to still make the Olympics. Like, I wasn't necessarily like, oh, 100% out of it. Like, my name's still on the list. It's just not high enough on the list to be in the top 4 in America. So it was kind of like a turning point, and I want to be able to help people. That's like kind of my mission always, was like to support other people through my own experiences. And this gym here at CrossFit Costa Mesa has like kind of been a second home to me since before the 2016 Olympics, because Christian's always been competing here, out of here, and training out of here. And even when we would leave, we would always be back and forth from here. And so it's always felt like a very comfortable place. And so I talked to the owner about this back room that they already had 2 weightlifting platforms, and it was kind of just like their extra gear that they would keep back there that they weren't using on a regular basis. And then the platforms were just there, like they weren't really used. So when all of those changes were going on, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. I asked Max if there was an option for me to rent that space back there. And I had already started uplift programming online. So I was doing remote programming, but it was still kind of like in the beginning stages, like 1 or 2 athletes, like just to help like make a little bit of extra money, not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna be a coach full time. But when the gym was closing and then there was kind of a need for a physical location, I was like, well, maybe I'll ask about the pricing and figure that out. And anyways, long story short, it kind of all just happened really fast. And I was just like, okay, so I've got a space, I've got to build a couple more platforms, I should invite people to come train here. Like, I mean, so it kind of just fell in my lap. And I mean, not everyone, but I've gotten scolded for saying that, because I have worked really hard in the sense of like for myself in the sport to be able to do something like this. But in the sense that I wasn't necessarily planning for like a year, like, oh, I'm going to open a gym on this day, or I'm going to do this on this day. It kind of just was like the right time at the right place on accident kind of thing. But yeah, and then it happened really fast. Like all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, we had like 6 people training on a Saturday, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. Yeah, it's a full-on club now. We do have, most of our people are still remote, but we're doing like a lot of camp type of environments, sort of like what we did at Catalyst, because I thought that worked really well. And I think like changing up environment is really healthy for people, especially in weightlifting, because it's so mundane, like we talked about earlier. And also because like this area is still developing. So I'm trying to set up, probably in May, we'll set up like a more permanent like class schedule for like introduction to weightlifting for teens and youth athletes. So because that's kind of the mission for me, is more like the next generation. I really am excited about creating a youth program. I've always been really excited about that. I've talked to helping out at a lot of other clubs, and people have reached out to me for helping out with their clubs even before I got to this point. That almost started opening my eyes to it a little bit more, to coaching also, because like coaches and clubs that I really respected in the community were like, will you be my assistant coach? And I was like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing, but I don't want to move because Christian's still competing. And so that's when I kind of started like thinking about it. But yeah, I guess for me, when I started weightlifting, having a sport like this where I developed this small little community around me that supported me and believed in me, and then having the opportunity to travel and like see other places in the United States or other places in the world that wouldn't have necessarily been available to me had weightlifting not been accessible. So to me, it's being able to give kids that same opportunity that I had when I was a kid, to give them a little bit more purpose in their life and something that they can strive towards and for. But I'm not like keeping it closed to youth and juniors. I mean, that's where my passion is, but that's not all we're doing. Yeah, so I started my program, and it's like a adolescent mental health. It's basically counseling for kids, and I still am like kind of doing both that and teaching right now, so that I can get my teaching credentials, so that I could get a job sooner than having to go through like my master's program and everything else to be able to be a counselor or a psychologist. So yeah, I'm doing my teaching credentials right now. My goal with it is I'll probably teach until I get my master's degree so I can be a psychologist or like a counselor, depending on like what state we end up living in. Yeah, I'll always coach. I'm gonna try to do both, try to wear all the hats all the time. And honestly, like one of my biggest role models in like the coaching club domain is, well, there's two. Derek Johnson with his program in LA right now, he's got like basically scholarships that he gives to kids. So like they start weightlifting, they weightlift for free, and then you know, when they do super well or hit certain things, he gives them money towards college. And I think that's like a really cool thing that he's doing. And then the other one is Kevin Doherty's club up in NorCal with Hassle Free. I actually like, I've asked him so many questions over the years, because I've always kind of envisioned like that being my next chapter, is having like, I don't want to call it like an inner city program, because especially living here in Costa Mesa, like you can tell it's not inner city, but having a program outreach for kids, so I could get kids that need that extra support, having like a family like that, and to be able to have something productive for them to do after school, and then taking them around to the country to compete, and if they earn it internationally. That's how I started, and my weightlifting coaches were out of my school, and so it married itself really well together. Yeah. The reason I started talking about like life outside of weightlifting too is because I would get so caught up in like everything that I needed to do to be the best I could be, and like you have to make selfish choices when you do that. And when I didn't make the Olympics in 2016, it was like a big wake-up call. Like I sacrificed all this time with my family. My grandpa, like the very next year, ended up getting sick and passing away. My dad got sick and passed away. Like all these things happened like the year after, and I was like, I'm missing out on all this time with my family, and all this time my husband's trying to qualify for the CrossFit Games again, and he's had injury after injury after injury, and like all these setbacks, and here I am so singularly focused on what I want to do, and I don't think it's fair to do that anymore. Like I just got to this point where I was like, I've given so many years to this sport, like how can I spread this out a little bit? And so that's when I started going back to school, and that's when I started thinking about my future beyond just like the Olympics. And I don't know if that hurt me or helped me in this last 4 years, but I think that's where it came from. It's really hard to like check yourself with your priorities. When we were in Wadapalooza, I wanted to be able to train because I want to be able to compete in May, and I do have a big goal for May, and I have this in my mind, like these numbers, these goals or whatever, but I'm here for my husband's competition, and then he needs me to cook for him and clean for him and do all these things, and thankfully his mom was there too, so I was able to like go train. But I would feel really guilty like going and training for like 4 hours and then rushing back to the Airbnb and like getting all the things that he forgot, getting all my things, making sure I'm there, making sure I find his mom so we can get a good enough seat, like making sure, like trying to manage everything. And then like I had this talk with her one of the days, because I was having really bad anxiety, just trying to balance it all. Like I was stressed out because I wanted to get there in time. I was stressing out about, I went to the gym and someone said something about another competitor that I compete with, and I don't know that it like got in my head in like a negative way, but it made me start thinking a lot about stuff that I've gotten with my competition and like my situation and things like that. And so it made me start thinking more than I was prepared to that day. And so by the time that we got to his competition, I had been rushing and thinking and rushing and thinking and rushing, and then I was nervous for him to compete because it was an important competition for him, so I was having like a little anxiety attack. And I was talking through it to Christian's mom, and she was like, oh yeah, like whenever I go, because her daughter plays lacrosse at Stanford, and so she's obviously a very high level athlete also, and she competes like almost every weekend. And so Christian's mom goes back and forth between their things like all the time, and she's like a very healthy woman, and she counts macros and she works out, and she's like, if I get to work out, then I get to work out. That's great. If I don't get to work out, then it's okay. I just go into that with that mindset of, you know, I'm traveling, Christian's the priority. And so then it made me think, like, am I being selfish by training right now? Like, is this the right choice right now? And I don't know. So it's just constantly making choices like that every day. And balancing all those things is like a tough thing. And I think going through it for one quad, like Kate Vibert's doing a great job of it right now. Going through it it's possible, but like after a while it starts to like make you feel guilty. And so it's something that like I just personally readjusted recently, or like the last 4 years. People that are around you hopefully are supportive of that. And so it's really like I got to the point where I was like, they're continuing to make these sacrifices for me and making these excuses for me because they support my goals and they support my dreams. And I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to ask that of them anymore because it's been so long. Like my mom, for example, like she's been my mom my whole life, and it's been half of my life of me doing this and her making these sacrifices. Like, at what point is it okay for me to be like, yeah, let's go on a vacation? Like, how about I go travel and see you for Christmas? Like, I don't do those things. She lives in Florida. And so if it doesn't fit around my training or competition schedule, like I don't fly out there, and they don't have a ton of money to fly out to California every couple months, you know? So for the holidays, like the least I could do is like make an effort and go. And even if I have a competition coming up, you know, just like little things like that I think are important. And there's a big time zone gap, so it's not like I can just call her every day because I'm working and she's working, and you know, so yeah, it's just the little things.
Yeah, and I think kind of to spin it on some positive way, you know, we kind of take from our friends or family the system, you know, as we're developing, and then like you've described, you know, with all the things that you're trying to juggle right now with uplift, you know, weightlifting, you know, with teaching, with everything that you're doing, it sounds like, you know, you're giving back to the community. So you know, take from a part of our life and now give back.
Thanks.
People, so.
Yeah, I mean, that was, thank you. Thank you for coming.